Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call this special Board of Finance meeting on Monday, April 27, 2020 to order. We have 3 items on the agenda. We're going to start off tonight with public forum. Limited to 3 minutes on the agenda. We have let everybody into the meeting. I just want to let everyone know that they will be muted initially and during public forum. If you wish to address the Board of Finance in public forum, we ask that you would use your raise hand, I guess, tool, and then you can be unmuted by the host. We'll let you speak, and then we will close off public forum and continue on with our meeting. The one thing I am going to do at some point, I know a lot of you have your videos on. What I am going to do is we are going to allow you to all hear, but we may, depending on what the background noise is in terms of the videos, we may shut down videos. You will still be able to hear, but we just don't want any distractions during the meeting if there's anything going on in video or in audio for that matter. So I think that everybody's in. Tracy, you're going to continue to look at the waiting room, right? To let people in? Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll start with the public forum. Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? And I'm scanning the screen to see if there's anybody who's raising their hand. This is going to be a quick public forum with a lot of public, so it's great. Last call, anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum. And hopefully you know how to use the raise hand tool.
Oh. I see somebody raising their hand on the screen. I don't know if that means.
Okay, I do, yep. We got you, and you're on. I believe this is Barbara Hartgraves, right?
It is, it is.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? Is this, go ahead.
I just want to let you know that we need you to state, excuse me, state your name and address for the record, and then you can begin.
Okay, this is, so my name is Barbara Hargraves, and I am at 284 Landon's Way. And this is the point where I can speak, I can address you guys about the budget proposal. Yep. Okay, I just wanted to thank you all for, first of all, for having this meeting in this format so that people could comment, and then and thanking you for all the work that you're doing. I would just like to encourage you to support the budget proposal as it was submitted, voted on and submitted to you guys. Specifically, I'm thinking about the education side of it. I know the Board of Ed spent a lot of time with that budget, and I just know that with the current state of affairs with the pandemic and the way that we've been doing online schooling, which has been great. I know that in the fall, when we eventually get back to school, the kids are really going to need the support of their teachers. The teachers are going to need the support from the town in terms of finances. And I just would really like to say that I am very much in support of just, you know, accepting the budget as is, so that we can continue to provide our kids with, you know, what they're going to need in the fall. I have 2 kids in school. I have one in high school and one at Adams Middle School. And that's all I have to say, I guess. And thank you for everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering if we should remind people that there's like an electronic raise your hand with Zoom. I don't know if that's holding anybody back.
Especially for those that are not on video, which most of the people are not on video, so I'm looking for the raised hand right now. I don't see any others. Tracy, do you? Okay.
Yeah, Regina Sullivan is raising her hand.
She is. Oh, okay. On video, okay, gotcha. Regina Sullivan, you're all set. You're on.
Hi, thanks for giving me an opportunity. I just wanted to chime in. I did contact everybody in writing as well. I just wanted to give my support, lifelong resident of Guilford and Guilford High School school teacher for 20 years, president of the Teachers Union. I've seen the Board of Ed budget as it was presented when the Board of Education shared it with the GEA. And I think, as usual, Dr. Freeman did a great job not padding the budget, for lack of a better term. That seemed reasonable at the time. There were great rationales behind everything he put in there, and I think specifically the coaching supports. Just to kind of piggyback on what Barbara had said, I think everyone understands in the unprecedented times we need as much support as possible moving forward, and the coaching, as well as all the other tools and supports that have been built in there, are essential. And I think the Guilford teachers have shown up consistently over the last 10 years in my tenure with the union, whether it was being asked to give back to the town. You know, I'm not ignoring the hardship that many families are going through, but these are our kids and they're going through a hard time right now, and they need us to show up, and they need us to show up with resources to help them next year. That's it.
Thank you, Regina. Did you, at the beginning, we got your name, but I just want to make sure your address was also indicated, right?
I'm sorry, it was not. I live at 4 Milford Road in Guilford, Connecticut.
Thank you. Just want to, stick to the officiality.
My apologies.
That's okay, Regina. It's okay. Anybody else wishing to address the Board of Finance? Now I'm looking at videos and looking for the tool. So anyone else?
Yeah, I'm wondering if people know they have to kind of hit this more button and look for the raise your hand feature.
Well, what did I do here? Okay. I hit the lock button.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep,
Christine, there's a Christine Latalide has got her hand raised.
Yep.
Okay. Chris,
I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong.
Tracy, you got it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
That's fine. I'm Christine Latayad. That's fine. For not pronouncing it properly, most people don't. It's French origin, so that's quite all right.
Go ahead, Christine.
So my name is Christine. I am a parent of 3 children in Guilford, 1 at Calvin Leet and 2 in high school, a freshman and a junior. We've been in Guilford for 12 years. I just want to say that we moved to Guilford, and looking at towns to move to, undoubtedly, like many who have chosen Guilford as their home, we chose Guilford for one of the main reasons is the education system. And we haven't regretted it for the past 12 years. And I must say, in these unprecedented times, our teachers have been doing as well as they can be expected, doing a great effort at making sure that our 3 kids are still learning.
Christine, we're having some audio issues, Christine.
Having them do their own. And since then, they have been.
We're having some audio issues.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're back.
Basically, I will keep it short. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm back. What I wanted to say is my husband and I have always pushed our children to do their best. We have 3 kids who
Christine, I think you've frozen up.
time or some catching up to do in the fall due to the fact that they're not in the classroom and due to the fact that my husband and I are not teachers. We're not educators, professional sense. So I do think that this is not the right time to be cutting from the education budget, and we realize that everyone is going through difficult times, adjusting their personal finances, adjusting their budgets in terms of their personal businesses. But we're a proponent of, let's not cut. Actually, we think we should be adding to the education budget for next school year, because we'll have a lot of catching up to do. Hopefully you heard that, and I will end there. And I did send a letter to the board.
Christine, thank you very much. Could you just, for record, indicate your address?
Yes, we are on 6 Polebridge Lane in Guilford.
Great, thank you. And we did hear most of what you had to say, and I do remember your letter, so.
Oh, good, thank you.
I'll recap the letters in a little bit. Anybody else in public forum? Okay, I don't see any. Just to let you all know, there will be public forum at the end of this meeting as well. So if anybody wishes to speak, there'll be another chance to do so. With that, I'm going to move on the agenda at this time. As I go through, Tracy, if you could go ahead and unmute those that are going to be participating in the meeting. Our item number 2 is going to be to discuss and take possible action on the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget in relation to the current pandemic situation and comments, questions received to date by Guilford residents regarding the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. This is where I take the iPad and I go all of my prepared notes, because there's a lot of them, but it's only to keep us on track as best as possible. So I wanted to give everybody a bit of an update on where we stand since the last meeting. As a recap, we have met in a special meeting regarding the budget on April 13th, which was a Monday. We then had a regular meeting that took care of our regular business on April 20th on Monday last week. And there was a line item that was exactly the same as the one that you all have on the agenda this evening, which is to discuss the budget. Since on the first meeting in April 13th, we had received 20 letters. By Monday of last week, we had received 80 in totality. And since last Monday, we have received 96 letters. That is a total of 176 emails of either commentary or requests that have come to the Board of Finance. I can assure you that the Board of Finance, knowing these particular 6 other individuals besides myself, have read every single letter. I have no doubt. But I did want to let everyone know what the tone of those letters were, to give you just an idea of at least the last week's worth of letters that we've received. Out of the 96 letters we received, and they were pretty straightforward. Some of them have multiple comments over time, but we had 82 that indicated to keep the budgets intact. We had 6 that indicated reduced tax increase or budgets. We had 7 that specifically talked about the vote and allowing the public to vote and their issues with that. And there was 1 that specifically was interested in opening up union contracts. That was just in the last week, but I think that in totality, when you look at the 176 received, I do want to kind of give a synopsis of where we stand on those. And these numbers are not going to add up to 176, and that's largely because some letters had multiple concerns. 135 indicated to keep the budgets intact. I will say that the majority of those were by probably 1/3, 2/3 were directed towards the school budget, which ironically is the budget that we approve every year and to send to the voters is about 2/3 Board of Education, 1/3 to the town, Board of Selectmen. 28 of the letters that we've received over this entire period have been to reduce the budget and tax increases. 8 have talked about contracts and union obligations and concessions. 8 have indicated that reductions are acceptable, but make sure they're not significant. 11 were regarding the allowance of voters to vote and trying to delay the vote. And 5 really had no opinion at all. They were just questions of the Board of Finance that they wanted answered. I think that no matter what the exact counts are, there is a majority that have indicated that they do not prefer reductions, or if there are any, minimal, if any. This is not going to be the only feedback we're going to be considering. As most of you know, we have ultimately sent a budget that we felt very comfortable with to voters. That was on March 5th. We had made some reductions to both of the budgets, and I will save you and spare you all of the numbers, but I can just flatly tell you that what was going to be voted upon at the referendum was ultimately a 1.44% tax increase. That would be the amount that the mill rate would be raised on the property taxes. That being indicated, we know what's in these budgets. We have been scrutinizing them. We have scrutinized them even more so than we thought after March 5th, that's for darn sure. And so where we left off on April 20th was ultimately either to make no changes at all or to make a combination of changes that would include either a reduction to the budgets and not adjusting the revenue, not reducing the budgets and just adjusting the revenue, or doing a little bit of both. We've also talked a little bit about using the unassigned fund balance as a possibility to offset the budget. We've talked about the dangers of doing so. And ultimately, we left it at that on our April 20th meeting before we adjourned to come to this meeting tonight. I am going to open this up to the board shortly. I just wanted to basically set some of the parameters and some of the summarization to the general public that's on. And if I don't say it later, I want to say it now. I want to thank everybody for participating in this. I know it's not a budget referendum where you have anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 people come out to vote, but I will tell you that the amount of response we've gotten is more than I think I've ever seen in totality during a process prior to budget referendum. And I know our board very much appreciates the comments that have been received. And I want to thank everybody for attending tonight and listening. And I encourage you to share what you hear tonight with those so that there are no rumors, because that has been somewhat prevalent on issues like this about what we plan on doing. And I will save you that too. I won't tell you what was in some of the letters about what was proposed, which has not been proposed as of yet. So what we've heard in general as our top responses to all of these comments is either to keep the budgets intact or keep the tax increase flat or minimal. That's been the two comments that we've heard over and over again. The second request that has come out about keeping the tax increase flat or minimal is really, if we don't find revenue sources, whether it's the use of unassigned fund balance or other means of finding revenue, it means a $1.4 million reduction in both budgets. I'm going to tell you that personally, I am not willing to do that. I will not cut these budgets, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself at this point. I would prefer to see a limited, non-substantial reduction to each of the budgets in reflection of what's going on today, and maybe possibly push some things down the road to next year. But we have scrutinized these budgets, and I believe that they really shouldn't have been touched in the first place any further than they already have been. And I would also possibly entertain, in terms of any kind of a, I guess, mitigation of tax increase, if at all, a possible use of the unassigned fund balance. There are a lot of dangers to that, but there's a possibility also that there might be surpluses that we may be able to just bring over. But there's limitations to that surplus that we have to consider, and we're going to be going over that tonight. That pretty much takes care of a lot of my prepared comments, but I wanted to remind the board, as I have done in a previous email today, just on the logistics of this meeting and what we are expected to do. Our agenda item does indicate that we are to discuss and approve the budget, but there is no mention of setting a mill rate tonight. I think as a suggestion for tonight, I want to raise this to the Board of Finance, is that per the Board of Selectmen requirement that has been put upon us and the direction to approve a budget by May 5th, that we do have the ability to do that tonight, although I do feel strongly that we should hold off on any setting of the mill rate. Number one, it isn't in the agenda specifically, and I want to make sure that when we do set that mill rate, it is very clear to the public that we are doing so. But I think it also might behoove us to wait a little while to see how much our estimated revenue budget may change regardless of regarding possible surplus projections that every year we do commonly have a surplus. Sometimes they're bigger than other years. This year, all bets are off the table, although we are getting those numbers in as we get closer to the June 30th fiscal year end. So with that being said, I think I just wanted to mention that tonight we have the ability to approve a budget, but I would not go any further than that until after we have a chance to discuss fully what the ramifications are on the revenue budget. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the Board of Finance after my comments. I just want to make sure everybody is unmuted on the board and start the conversation based on that summary. Anybody from the Board of Finance want to say anything?
Sure.
Mike, I'll go whenever I'm up in the lineup.
Ken, did you say you were going to go first?
I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I heard you say I'll go or something along those lines. Do you want to go?
I always seem to.
You lit up. So guess what? It's like Hollywood Squares. You lit up first. So. Okay.
Is that me? Am I?
Yeah. If you go ahead, and then Jonathan, if you could.
Yeah.
Ken.
Yeah. It's first of all, I wanted to agree with you and agree with the town. I've never seen, and this is 29 years of history. I have never seen so much participation before a budget vote, and this is remarkable. But again, everybody's been hit very hard by this, and everybody's had an incredible opportunity, especially parents, to see the impact of the times on their kids. And this is in addition to the impact that we're all facing through as voters and as taxpayers and as American citizens. These are not only unprecedented times, there's an unpredictable future, and between the unprecedented participation, the unprecedented times, and the unpredictable future, we're in a tough spot now in terms of what we are going to recommend to the voters. And I think the first point I'd like to make is that we are heading into very unpredictable times. We don't know what the year will bring. We don't know when we're going back to school. We don't know when we're going back to our lives. We don't know when we can walk unimpeded on the green. We've got a lot of things out here that's not only affecting Guilford, but of course it's affecting every city, state in the country. And we're all suffering this. On top of it all is the fact that there are burdens that we all have to share. And I would like, I think it's imperative upon, for the Board of Finance not to accept conditions as they are and not to anticipate right at this point, meaning that in order to predict what we're going to be doing with our unfunded balance, in order to predict that, you'd have to have a crystal ball better than mine. You would have to understand where we're going to be as a town, where we're going to be in terms of state aid. Are we going to be hit by tremendous concerns on the part of parents for deficiencies not deficiencies, but for unprecedented losses, let's put it that way, that their children have had in education, despite the commitment which has been passionately spoken by our union leaders and educational specialists, despite the fact that we've had 176 letters. That's still a fraction of where we are. We've had a lot of upset in the town. We are, I think we have to watch out. Whatever we do, we're going to be here in the fall, and we're going to be here through the next town year and school year. We want the support of our town employees. We want the support of our educators, and we want to be able to have the flexibility to move the budgets along for the next year as well. I don't think this is a be-all and end-all vote, but I think it's a step that we have to take cautiously. And I know we made the original cuts. Mike, you alluded to it. The original cuts when we approved the budget, and this was a million years ago before the pandemic, and we approved the budget with I believe it was a $100,000 cut from both the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen. Well, I think we can add to that. I think it'll be painful. I hope not too painful. I would think we could defer some plans, no matter how rooted those plans are, and then move forward. So at the moment, I'm completely open to the conversation and to the opinions of my colleagues. I'd like to hear what they have to say, but I think I'm sufficiently flexible to think that we can move in a number of directions, understanding what our backup positions will be in the coming year. I hope that wasn't too incoherent.
It was very coherent. Thank you. Jonathan, I think you had the next up.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I don't know if I can be that brief. I've got kind of three subjects to talk about. I think the first and foremost on my mind, and many people I spoke to, was this process and whether there's an alternative to this process. I've expressed a lot of concerns in the meetings and in the various emails that have been exchanged about this decision to let the Board of Finance vote in place of the Guilford budget referendum. I feel it usurps voter rights, and I don't think we should be doing it unless it's an absolute last resort. As you know from the last meeting, I wrote a heartfelt letter to the governor, very respectfully asking him for some clarification or possible latitude on his executive orders. And I've actually reached out to our state representative, Vincent Candelora, and I want to actually read his email. He finally got back to me when I asked him if we have the latitude as a town to decide if we could go forward with the referendum in some kind of safe manner after consulting with public health officials. He wrote back to me.
Jonathan, real quick before you read it, when did you receive this email?
It's only about a paragraph, this one. It's not too bad.
I'm asking, when did you receive it, though?
I received this. Oh, I received it on the 26th, yesterday.
All right. I believe that if there's anything that's going to be read in, we should have probably been aware of that, but go ahead, you can read it in the record.
All right, I appreciate that. He said, Jonathan, per your request, I forwarded your inquiries to the governor's office. An attorney on our House staff spoke with the governor's legal office. They indicated that the executive orders regarding budget and municipal finances provides each city and town with the ability to decide how and whether to conduct votes required in the budget process while maintaining rules of social distancing. Essentially, each local legislative body, in consultation with the local health departments, should make that decision. I've asked the governor's office to clarify the orders since a few towns and residents have inquired about the level of discretion and flexibility that the orders afford. If any further clarification is made, I will forward it to you. Be well, and Candelora. I think in light of the conference call that our state representative had with the governor's office, that we do have this latitude. I would be overjoyed if the governor would respond to our letter, but our House representatives are under the impression that we do have this latitude. And I've actually written now also to the Board of Selectmen, and I've asked them to consider again if we could reschedule the referendum, given this new information. And I would actually put forth a motion for this board that we delay the Board of Finance vote until the BOS has more time to consider if the budget referendum can be rescheduled and conducted safely. So I've got a few more points to make and perhaps another motion.
So yes, first of all, before our first selectman speaks, which I know he wants to, you're putting that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
All right, there's a motion on the table.
Mr. Ailes, have we lost Mr. Beatty?
I can hear you.
His video is lost.
Okay, thank you.
That being said, do I hear a second in the motion? No second in the motion. Okay, motion fails. No one seconded it.
All right.
That being said,
yep.
Before Matt speaks, as much as I appreciate your comments, you know that this board takes its direction from the Board of Selectmen. We have a governor's order that has mandated this process. We've discussed this process. I know that what you're trying to do is to be fair to the voters. I'm going to make one comment and then I'm going to let Matt continue on, or at least clarify this. I feel very strongly that we didn't wish this upon ourselves. We did not necessarily want to be in this position, and we have been elected to be in a position to make difficult decisions like this. This is a challenge none of us had thought was going to happen. I will say we've had hours of preparation to do this. We've had lots of input, and I think it's usurping our leadership ability to say that, yes, there's a few people that feel that it's very, that a voting mechanism is important, but when the executive order comes from a governor in 2 occasions and we have the direction from the Board of Selectmen, this is our direction. So I have no intention of this board trying to make any recommendation that is going to ultimately go against what the governor has mandated us to do or the Board of Selectmen has required us to do. With that being said, Matt, our first Mr. Hoey, do you have anything you'd like to say about that?
I do, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan, to your supposition that the information you have in front of you is accurate, correct, I want to raise a couple of questions. The first of which is you asked the question of Representative Candelora in light of 7S7, which was a subsequent order issued after 7I that dealt with the contemplation of other spending other than the budget, which was clearly delineated in 7I. It included things like special appropriations, bond approval, bond anticipatory notes, tax notes, tax anticipatory bonds. So you asked the question in reference to that. Yes, the answer is you could still have in-person voting and referendum on those types of activities with the approval of a local health director. It also clarified that you could move forward without that and do it through the Board of Finance. So I just want to make sure that people understand the argument you're making is somewhat specious because 7S7 only addresses those things that were not contemplated in 7I. I'm not a lawyer. I'm over my skis here, but this is the information I have from our counsel. I know you're not an attorney either, but on the advice of counsel, we have made the move that we have made. There is nothing new that has come out since 7S7, with potentially the exception of 7CC, which adds a couple of things to 7S7, including grants and collective bargaining agreements if those have to go before town meeting or referendum. They could be waived as well. So substance, the matter is considered from our perspective settled. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Matt, if I might continue. You know, I just wanted to make a point.
No, Jonathan, we're not having a legal argument here and discussion. That statement will suffice for my comments on this at this time.
All right, well, I appreciate your comments. And Mike, I just wanted to tell you that this particular order may not necessarily be mandatory. And that part of your comments, I can't specifically agree with.
Jonathan, what part of mandatory do you not understand? I'm sorry, I'm now starting to lose a little bit of patience with you as far as mandatory.
Mike, I just read to you a letter from our state representative who met with the governor's office, and they said that this choice was up to the towns.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
7S, Jonathan. 7S has nothing to do with
the question was not in regards to 7S.
Mr. Chairman?
The question was specifically in regards to 7S.
Your letter. I see, and I don't have the correspondence you had with your representative or that particular representative.
Well, I'd be glad to share it with you.
Well,
I have it up on my computer right now.
If it's addressing 7S, we addressed this last meeting. 7S does not have to do with the budget.
It is specifically to clarify 7I, Section 13.
All right. Well,
as are my letters to the governor, which I read in and provided to the Board of Finance.
And it doesn't change anything that this board is expected to do based on the governor's order or the Board of Selectmen direction.
I don't question that the Board of Selectmen can make the decision.
They did.
It's clear in the order.
You're questioning the decision. You're recommending that they postpone their decision. So
I'm requesting that they consider rescheduling the budget referendum. Absolutely.
Question? May I interrupt for a question?
Sure.
Hello?
Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't believe that Representative Candelaria is our representative. Representative Scanlon and Senator Cohen are our representatives in Hartford. Well, had you not run this by them, is your interpretation, so we've all acknowledged we're not lawyers here, have we gotten any input from our own elected representatives in the State House? Did you try?
Is that a question for me, Ken?
Yes.
Yes. For you,
no, I reached out to Representative Candelora. I believe he represents one of the districts in North Guilford.
But not our own not other representatives, just that particular one. Okay.
Well, to be fair, they can all work on behalf. So just to be fair, it doesn't have to go through every single one, but
no, but multiple representative opinion would be helpful in this. So
Mike?
Yes, Matt, go ahead.
No, it's actually Lou.
Oh, Lou.
I'm just sort of curious. There was a motion that came up, didn't pass. I'm not sure what the current debate is. There's nothing on the table. So I'm sort of curious what the next agenda item is.
Yeah, if I could go on, I have a few comments about the budget itself. And then I'll give the floor to the next.
If you want to move on to additional points, that's fine, Jonathan. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to recap that I've already voted and motioned to reduce this budget further in our previous meetings. And I've done this because I feel that although a 3% annual budget increase in 1 year is not particularly egregious, 3% budget increases year after year, decade after decade, compound, and they lead to excessive mill rates. And I believe these seemingly never-ending spending and tax increases provide very little incremental benefit to taxpayers. And once they're high enough, they begin to erode real estate values. If you compound my existing concerns before this crisis with the economic crisis we're facing right now, that with unemployment on the scale of the Great Depression, I feel even more strongly that taxpayers in Guilford are in critical need of tax relief. I remain astonished at the disparity between essential workers and municipal workers protected by executive orders compared to the millions of people in this country and many residents here in Guilford whose businesses and jobs are considered to be non-essential. So we, the essential, we sit in our houses. Again, our fridges are full, our paychecks are protected. We sit watching our TVs and our internet. You know, meanwhile, non-essential workers in Guilford, they've had no income in over a month. They're applying for government assistance and emergency programs just to survive. They're staring at bills that keep rolling in, and a lot of them might even be struggling to put food on the table. And in the middle of this contrast, this board, will it even consider the notion of decreasing the town budget or holding spending flat for the next year? You know, as I asked before, is there any level of economic calamity that's required before this board would recommend that the BOE or BOS think about what's really essential and what's not essential? And I would ask, you know, are salary increases essential? Is new hiring essential? Are renovations to teachers' lounges essential? New carpets and tiles and painting, is this essential? Do we have to have additional sidewalks? I wouldn't want to see the town lose its golf course, but do we have to do improvements to the golf course this year? So, you know, I asked these questions, you know, and I would motion that we take, I would motion to decrease the proposed 2021 budget of Guilford such that it remains flat at the same level as the 2019-2020 budget. So there's no increase in spending in order to provide tax relief for Guilford residents in light of the devastating financial impact that stay-at-home orders to prevent transmission of COVID-19 outbreak have had on the residents. I would even propose a motion that we take any surplus from 2019 and 2020 and have it be refunded to the taxpayers to provide further tax relief and put some money in their pockets.
Well, that's a lot to cover there. The one thing I will say that you're talking about the budgets being flat. You're talking about a 0% increase on both budgets, which is...
Yep, and I'll put that in the form of a motion.
So you're talking about one, I don't remember the exact number, but it's 1.6?
1.1.
Well, 1.4 is a cut that we'd have to make to the budgets to just get to 0% tax increase. There's still an increase in the budgets.
I'm proposing a 0% budget increase.
Budget increase, that's 1.7 or somewhere thereabouts. I don't know the exact number, but it's more than 1.4 to both budgets.
The budget's up by like 3-point-something% this year.
Well, I'm looking for my mill rate sheet and I can't find it, so.
That represents a cut to the Board of Education budget of $1,177,628 on the education side.
All right. What's the town side on that?
Mike, if I can interject.
Yeah. What's a 0% increase? What's the cost? What's the amount?
Overall, the entire budget, $3,143,105 Board of Ed and town. It includes just shy of $1 million in debt service.
Okay, so that's the 3.1 million is the increase?
Correct.
Including debt service.
And that's including debt service.
Board of Education,
which
town,
we can't touch. Can't touch debt service. So take the debt service out of that. That's what that brings us to what number again?
The debt service is $978,000, so it's about $1 million. So you're still looking for 2.1 million.
2.1 million flat? Or
the motion is for a 0% increase in the budget. I don't expect a second, but that's the motion.
Okay. Well, I am just making sure it's clear what those numbers are. Because we got a viewing public here that needs to understand what a zero increased budget is.
Mike, if you pull up on Board Pack, I believe you have the mill rate summary on Board Pack. All the members should be able to see that. It's where these numbers are coming from.
I got it.
And you can quote whatever numbers you're interested in looking at.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the
There's
number is 986 for the town budget, 1.177 million from the school's budget, 978,000 out of debt service. So take that 978 and add it to the cuts that would need to be made to both the Board of Education and the town budget. So
Right.
nearly $1 million.
It's about 2.1.
So that would have to come out of the operating budgets of the town and the Board of Education.
Correct.
Okay. Yep. I got them right here. So there's a motion on the table. Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second? Okay. Motion fails. No second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any additional comments from the Board of Finance? Megan.
Can I? Sure. So I'll be brief, but I just wanted to say, I know I'm a newer member on the board, but I think this is, and I think I speak for most of my colleagues, when this is probably the hardest decision, at least in my time, that we've had to make. I know there's been history of harder decisions, but I think there's two main issues that we're trying to do, and we're trying to balance the need for resources with the unknown of this. Like, this is a once in a lifetime pandemic, hopefully for most of us, once in a lifetime scenario. There's no question that there are people in this community that are hurting. My day job is literally talking to people that have never accessed resources before, and they are having to, and it is something that is demoralizing, and they're afraid of what's next, and you know, they're feeling financially insecure. But at the same time, this is the time where I truly believe, and this is something that I've heard from a lot of people I've interacted with, that government is needed, that we are here for this reason, to play a role in making sure that people don't lose their house, and making sure that people have food on their table. That includes education services. One of the things that I am very concerned about is students going back to school after having been off this long. Granted, I'm sure the teachers are doing absolutely all they can with video teaching. I have no idea how they're doing that, but God bless them for doing it. But there's no substitute to in-person instruction, especially for the most vulnerable students that need the extra supports and need the extra help. So I think we have work to do in terms of balancing the relief that I hear from many constituents, yes, that there's relief needed, but also resources to make sure that we aren't getting so far behind in terms of our town services and our education services. So I think we have a real discussion around that. The second thing I would really say is I think we're very focused right now on this year's budget, but I think next year's budget is going to be tough, like it is for every other town in the state of Connecticut. Do I think we'll have a hard time with state aid? I have no idea what the governor's budget will look like. We have great representation in Hartford, to include Senator Cohen, Representative Scanlon, yes, that one I'm biased on, but including Representative Candelora, who will be in leadership. He'll be the minority leader, or majority leader, depending on the election next year. So I don't worry necessarily about Guilford's representation at the state level and getting the state funds that it needs. However, I do think that next year's budget is going to be an unpredictable and volatile one as well. And I think if we budget in an irresponsible way, like a 0% increase this year, we will be in such worse shape next year for voters. So I do think that, you know, I'd love to hear from my colleagues in terms of what they're thinking, but I would really caution any major cuts to education or to the town side. Those are, I think I say this every year, but we get so caught up in the numbers that we forget that there's people behind these numbers, and that government is a people-driven business. And that those are our teachers and our firefighters who are, you know, risking their lives at the moment, and their families, and our police officers, and all of the things that we have come to really value in this community. I think we need to make sure those are there for all of our constituents, the most vulnerable, as well as the ones that are maybe not as impacted by this. So I'd love to hear from my colleagues about their thoughts, but I really think we need to think about this in a strategic long-term way. So I'd entertain any suggestions that they might have.
My turn?
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. Thanks, Marion. A couple of themes that drive me and how I think we might wish to proceed. They start with who we are as a town, and then they head toward the financial, which has a lot to do with our responsibilities here. So I can't shake the sense that what made Guilford the extraordinary community it is that one never heard I'm more important than you. The sense that we're all on the same page, regardless of outside views, is the foundation on which we stand. There's value in everybody's opinion, in their contribution. So this is where I think we get our extraordinarily strong sense of volunteerism. We're pretty tolerant. This is why I'm so concerned that we don't identify one group over another to be the recipient of full support. Government is not just the people who provide the services, it's everybody. It's everybody who pays for it as well. So unless their very lives depend on it, you know, while the bottom is dropping out on so many of us. So with only a few months to go in this budget, I think we can already point to potential gaps in revenue due to delayed or lost revenues. And what next year brings, I think we all can agree, will be much more challenging. Now, we all recognize the importance of the knock-on effects of our excellent services performed by our education and town employees. There's no question that we're very proud of our students and the value for money education they receive. But the pandemic is changing all the rules. I believe they will catch up in time, along with the students around the rest of the world. Many people in Guilford will never recover, either financially, professionally, or personally. If there's no compromise volunteered by or requested from anyone who might seek exception from cutbacks, the situation becomes one of entitlement. That's a concept foreign to Guilford, or it should be. I respect all our unions, but the characterization of discussions with them as dangerous at our last meeting might have been short of their capacity or their willingness to offer assistance, and I hope they'll find some ways. I'd ask anybody who thinks that they should be fully funded in the event of a loss of revenue, who should be cut? Who would you choose? So the second theme that I learned many years ago from a former member of this Board of Finance, who only had to say this once, he said, very few people can pay all their own bills. So the issue there is if a family has one child in the Guilford school system and the imputed tuition is $17,500, it's most likely not covered by the portion of their property tax or the portion assigned to their education. You make it 2 or 3 children in the school system, the numbers become very eye-opening. Who's paying for this? So this can't be, you know, one of these our hearts and minds are with them moments. I acknowledge the town has offered 90-day deferrals on property taxes and has eased renewal and application process for the senior tax freeze. I believe we have to demonstrate our understanding that taxpayers are suffering setbacks. It should go without saying that when incomes fall, income tax falls with, but property taxes don't. So in order to acknowledge this via some spending reduction or delay until we have a better grip on the data is the compassionate and reasonable course of action, in my view. So we can talk numbers a little bit more later in detail, but I support applying whatever surplus, if any, this year's budget produces against property taxes, delay of some capital spending, although, you know, I'd rather not, that's not my normal thing, but in this unique moment in time, it's appropriate. A simple reality check with the unions to offer the opportunity for them to volunteer assistance without opening dangerous talks. and making available enough of the unassigned fund as is absolutely necessary in this budget to plug remaining gaps in providing emergency services if they're needed. So my understanding is that under the governor's executive orders, we're not empowered to make decisions regarding bonding, I think, Matt, but when available, I'd support issuing bonds in this environment tied to specific and necessary expenditures. Budget restrictions should be proportional to spending, and I'm not actually suggesting anything radical, but I think a smaller mill rate increase to 1%. Instead of 1.44, that's a percentage gain for the upcoming budget is something worth discussing. That's it for me right now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You actually went to a couple areas in what you said, and I want to make sure everybody on the board speaks, but we should address at some point what is coming up. We've already done this, by the way, with Dr. Freeman and First Selectman Hoey regarding what's coming up this coming fiscal year regarding union contracts and what's already been done. And then also any kind of proposed or projected surplus that we might be possibly realizing. There have been surpluses in the past that have gone to unassigned fund balance, which has been a very good thing based on a lot of different reasons to get us built back up in there where we can actually talk about it, where we couldn't have talked about this 5, 6 years ago. Any kind of unassigned fund balance, it was untouchable. But I did want to make sure that we address that at some point. If anybody else wants to speak, go ahead, or else maybe we could ask a couple of questions regarding contracts and surpluses.
Mike, can you just for the record go through the contracts that are up so people know? Yes, I can't necessarily do it. I can tell you that on the town side, there's, I believe, Matt, you can confirm this. I believe there's 5 or 6 union contracts that are up. And then Dr. Freeman, the teachers have been, their contract was renewed last summer. And I don't know what contracts on the Board of Ed side. I don't know exactly which ones on the town side. So Matt, if you could respond to the ones that are up and what we've already recently done, and Dr. Freeman, same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have police, fire, public works, Guilford Employees Association, and Guilford Supervisors Association, all currently in negotiations. And I say currently in negotiations. We've begun them with all those unions.
Okay. Fair to say that those are 5 of the more major contracts.
They are.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Freeman, go ahead.
We essentially just concluded negotiations with 5 of our 6 groups last year. The only one that we still have up that we were going into that needs to be concluded in this cycle is the contract for paraprofessionals and clerical support positions. We just concluded negotiations into a new 3-year cycle with 5 of the other 6 groups.
We have one more, Dr. Freeman, as well. It's food services up this year too.
Right, thank you.
But food service doesn't have an impact on the budget. It's not part of.
It's covered by revenue.
Right, it's not covered by the Board of Ed budget.
They're self-sustaining in the revenues they generate through food sales.
Good point. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Mike, if I could just say one thing about the contracts.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just urge my colleagues to just think about the contracts that are up and think about all of the extra work that fire is doing, police is doing, the food service workers are doing free school lunch, passing out. So I do think that is something to think about right now, and how we show value with individuals. And I totally get that we're in this collectively, but is also by showing them value in getting compensated realistically for what they're doing. So I would just urge my colleagues to think long and hard before making any recommendations about union contracts.
When we talk about, and Megan, good point, I just want to go back to something that was said before. When it comes to essential versus non-essential, it's very hard to think about opening up contracts, whether they've already happened or they're about to happen. When you're talking about the 5 that our first selectman just said, the ones that are coming up on the Board of Ed side, but also, I mean, reopening a contract for teachers. I just can't fathom and imagine opening up a contract for teachers when they are putting so much extra in. I know that personally. I know that through community colleagues that I know it through the letters we've heard, and a lot of friends. And I know that contract was done last year, but I wouldn't even want to consider. Listen, there are a lot of people that are hurt, but the teachers are going above and beyond. And just to ask teachers, fire, public works, police, hey, do us a favor this year. Can you come in 0% and not be increased? Listen, if they weren't non-essential, or if they weren't essential, in my mind, they're essential. I think they deserve it.
I've got to point out, I didn't ask for anybody to reopen.
No. I know, Bob. I know. But if there was a voluntary, you were talking more about voluntary.
But I think it's important that, who doesn't hear from people in town, they wonder about this. It's 80% of the budget. Are you guys thinking about this? The answer you're giving is very informative, but really, I don't think we have to go there for very long.
Right. Just while I had the question up before, I threw it out there, and this is to Linda and Mary Jane. Wondering if it was actually a question that we usually ask at every single regular meeting, is what do you think your projection is for the end of the year? And Linda, you actually, I shouldn't say just Linda. Linda is, has a sheet that comes out and it basically says what the projections may or may not be. Mary Jane always literally comes out and says, this is where we think we're going to be because there's the revenue and the expenditure side. Do you, either one of you or both of you, have any kind of a projection that you're looking at right now? And I would love to say we won't hold you to it because we know how fluid it is, especially in these times. But do you have any idea right now of where June 30th might land us? Mary Jane, if you want to go ahead first.
Yes. I anticipate that on the town side, and I'm not including Board of Ed, so I will let Linda speak to that specifically, a surplus this year of approximately $275,000, which is significantly less than what we've seen in the past few years. And that entire surplus will be generated on the revenue side. As I stated at the last meeting, as of this month, we would expect to be 100% received of our revenues for the year. So really the question is, how much more will we receive for the next couple of months? And I anticipate that some of our highest revenue generating departments, such as tax collection, town clerk, fire, building department, and along with that, our seasonal income generating departments like Park and Rec and the Guilford Lakes Golf Course, they'll all be generating less revenue this quarter than they did the same time last year. So the revenue that we're going to generate through this budget for the surplus really is coming on the state side, ECS and other state revenue. We're bringing in $265,000 more than budgeted in ECS because we didn't know where the budget was going to go this year, and another $58,000 more in other state revenue. That means that all of our other departments combined will not meet our projected budgets. So that's the revenue side. On the expenditure side, I anticipate a flat budget at year end. All our departments are still utilizing their staff, and ongoing expenses are still being generated since all of our departments are up and running one way or another. One of the departments that will be saving us some money is the Registrar of Voters, since we've canceled the referendum and we're moving the primary into next year. However, that means that next year's budget is already in jeopardy because of that. A lot of our training budgets will see savings, as many of our conferences this spring for this half of the year were canceled, but these savings will be available to offset other line items that may go over at the end of the year. You mentioned capital. We currently have $164,000 in capital that has not been spent or already encumbered. However, postponing the remaining projects and equipment purchases only again pushes that expense off till next year or into the future. It does not make them go away. And, you know, we have projects at our waste transfer station that are for safety purposes. You know, things like that are hard to say we're not going to do. Probably more than you wanted to know, but in the end, we only anticipate, as I said, $275,000. And that is as much of a guess in my crystal ball as Ken noted in his. So that's where we stand on the town side.
Well, that's exactly what we wanted to know, I think. So thank you for that. Linda, your thoughts?
Yes. So right now we're looking at somewhere around $200,000 to $250,000. As with any projection that I usually give you this time of year, I always say it can move either direction, but right now that's where we are thinking we are going to be.
I would just add that that is significantly higher than what you have seen from the schools in past years. That is being impacted by the closure that we're experiencing right now. But again, I just want to offer some cover for Linda. Those projections are being done under conditions that we've never experienced before. So any analog that we have to make projections other than salaries, which we know are impacting us unchanged, we're not saving on salaries. Everything else is a moving target at this point. So we know that there will be surplus. We know it'll be more than you've seen from the schools in the past several years. But there's a bit of crystal ball work going on the school side as well.
Thank you, Linda. Right now, again, I want to make it clear that, Linda, what you said, how many times have we heard that number, and you and Dr. Freeman, whoever's reporting from the Board of Education, says that can change literally with one student. And so it's a very fluid number. Although I will say, to that point, it is encouraging, at least on a surplus number, that's where it stands compared to other years. But we also understand the other years have been very tight. So there's this, you know, there's a balancing act there that, you know, the tighter the budget, the less of a chance that there's going to be a surplus. This year, of course, the surplus sounds like it's going to be caused a little bit more based on what's going on right now. However, July 1st starts and the fall season, you know, starts in the next fiscal year. It's a completely different set of rules that we've never seen before. So I appreciate those honest projections as they stand today. Tomorrow they may change. So,
yes.
Anybody else? I want to make sure everyone on the board had a chance to speak.
Are there any savings in capital on the education?
Sorry, say that again, Ken.
Any savings projected in capital on the Board of Education?
On the Board of Education side? Linda, is there what's currently is there encumbrances on the capital side?
So most of the capital for site improvement was spent during the summer. The projects that were started were done over the summer, and then there are some projects that are being done now while we can actually do some work in the schools. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of savings in capital.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because usually once July 1st hits, school's out, all the capital projects are being done that summer. So right. It's really front loaded.
And in an odd sense, Mr. Ailes, because we were running closer to on budget with special education spending this year, there were not freezes put in place. So because we were doing better, we released significant amounts of capital monies early in the school year, where compared to last year, when we opened the school year in a whole on tuition and other special ed items, we had frozen some of the capital monies. So in a different year, Ken, there would have been more savings projected there. But this year, we had spent many of those monies early in the school year prior to early March because we were running well.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Veronica, go ahead.
I said this back on March the 5th, and it's true today as it was then. I wish I had a crystal ball, because when you put together a budget, the future is always unknown, but this year it's very much unknown. What I do know, or what we all know, is that the information we have at this point in time is that unemployment is high. We know we're going to need additional resources in our schools. We'll need resources for human services, police, fire, senior services. We know we're going to have reduced revenue in some form, whether it's delayed property taxes, building permits, town clerk, ambulance revenues, reduced state aid, all of that. And then according to the CDC, we could be looking at doing this again in the fall. This virus could rear its head again in the fall. And then what do we do? And what does it look like? Do we close the schools again? Do we do 2 phases of school days like, you know, we used to do back in the day with kindergarten, morning school and afternoon school, so we can social distance our children? It's just so many things that we don't know. But I believe it with all my heart that our purpose is to take care of our citizens, that's our job in local government. I do know that people are hurting, and I do believe that we need to provide some form of tax relief for them. So I think cutting this budget is responsible and appropriate. But I want people to understand we're kicking the can down the road. And we did this in 09, 010 during the financial recession. You know, we gutted our capital, and the town of Guilford got through it. We paid the price, we paid it dearly, but we kicked the can down the road for many years. We're gonna have to do that again, just like many Guilford residents are doing it. We're going through our budget as many town residents are doing with their personal budgets. And we need to provide relief. Now, having said that, I, at this point in time, would support using any surplus, whatever that number is from this current year, using it to offset the budget for next year. I would not be in favor at this time in using our unfunded balance. And the reason is not that I don't think that we, you know, it's why we have it. We need it for emergencies. It's you know, appropriate. But I honestly think we're going to need it in the 21-22 budget. And that's when I think we're going to need to go to it. So those are my thoughts. And what I do also know is that our community is resilient. It's supportive. It's amazing and loving. And I have seen more acts of kindness and support every single day. And I know that as a community, we're all going to get through this. You see that stupid commercial on TV, you know, we'll get through, we're all in it together. It's true, we are all in it together. And we'll get through this, and we'll get through it stronger and better. We just need to be responsible right now. And that's where my thoughts are.
Thank you, Veronica.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add something?
Jeff, go ahead.
I agree with a lot of what Veronica just said. The way I look at it right now is we're a mile into a marathon of undetermined length. And we don't know what the course is ahead of us. We don't know how long we're going to be on this path. And we don't know what the obstacles are that are going to present themselves to us along the way. And I think to the extent that we can, that a year from now, when it's time to adopt a budget for 21-22, we'll be much better informed in terms of what the impact has been on the town, what the expense, both on the revenue side and on the expense side. We'll have a better understanding of where we are with regard to the systems that need to be in place in the schools, at the police department, at the fire department, at the library, at Public Works, and we'll be in a much better position to make a determination as to what's appropriate with regard to tax increases, what's appropriate with regard to taking funds from the unfunded from the fund balance, and you know, where we are, how much further along we are towards the end. And I think I'm less inclined to tap into the unfunded, to the fund balance right now, simply because we may need it more next year than we do now. Along the same lines, I think that we want to save that. And I'm not saying it's not raining yet, but I think it's going to be raining a lot harder over the next few months than any of us could speculate right now.
Agreed.
Thank you, Jeff. I think we've all had a chance to speak. Again, I guess I just want to throw out there a reminder of what we can do tonight, or should do, and the timelines in front of us. Again, what we heard from a lot of our constituents that are residents of this town, focused on keeping the budgets intact and having relief. And as I mentioned before, tax relief. And as I mentioned before, I'm inclined to do a little bit of both. I think it answers both questions. And I think to go to what Bob is saying, you know, a 1% would certainly, 1% tax increase, mill rate increase. Just so you all know the numbers, we're talking about, just rounded, about $450,000 swing. All right, so that means any combination of cuts and finding revenue sources. I believe that we know that both budgets don't have much room, but we also know that these are unique circumstances. I wouldn't want to be cutting the budgets too much. I mean, I can certainly throw out numbers. I would want to get my colleagues' thoughts on it. But again, to get to a 450 number, to get to 1%, I mean, we'd have to go either pretty deep into the budgets, or we'd have to go pretty deep into unassigned fund balance to get much lower than that. And I really don't want to entertain a 0% tax increase because of what it can do, both in the effect on the budgets on the expenditure side, but what it could do later on is, a lot of us have already mentioned, not so much this budget that we're talking about for 2021, but 21-22, where there's so many unknowns. And by the way, I don't think any of us mentioned that next year, the governor will be coming out with a biennial budget. This is the second year of a biennial budget. Next year, all bets are off on what municipality impact will be based on the governor's decisions and then what the legislature does. So we don't even know that number, and that has certainly given us fits in the past when the governor's budget came out prior to a budget referendum and accommodating for that. And luckily, we had a very good legislative constituency that really helped us out on that and assisted us not as a town getting hit. That being said, I mean, I think that on a budget level in reductions, I mean, there's some areas we can't tell the Board of Education where to go. We all know that. I don't think there's a lot of room. I'm thinking it's maybe around the line of 200,000. I'm thinking that on the town side, and I'm going to tell you why the town side would be 100 is because the more you go on the Board of Ed side, listen, you know, the budget that we send to the voters is 2/3 in the schools and 1/3 in the town. And out of fairness, when you're talking about 25,000, 50,000, smaller numbers, I think a 50-50 isn't a hugely big deal. But it does come down to principle. And when you talk about bigger numbers, it's only fair that there's a bigger number on the Board of Education side. Yes, I know there's a lot of people that'll say, yeah, but you can't cut, we heard it in the letters. Don't cut the Board of Education budget. In principle, it is not fair to cut one budget and not the other, especially when 2/3 of it is on one side and 1/3 is on the other. and stating that more for a public service announcement than I am to this board, because we all know that. So I just want to hear thoughts as far as numbers in terms of budget reductions, how far people are willing to go. Individually, I will tell you that I've talked to some of you individually, and I can tell you that there is not much of a palette to make any reductions. But I'm going to throw out a 200, 100, which would be a total $300,000 cut or reduction to the budgets as they stand now. And let's just talk about the budget reductions and not necessarily about the tax increase at this particular moment. That is basically me opening it up to the floor for the Board of Finance.
Mike, in what you're suggesting, are you also including any surplus from the current budget?
Right. Well,
or are you just talking? You're just talking cuts.
I'm just talking about reductions. What we feel where we can go. I know that most of us, we already made our reductions, right? And now we've got a different time in front of us. So if we're talking about if there's anywhere to go, we know that there are some discretionary items and we know that there are some capital items. Now I can only say this for the Board of Selectmen. I can't say it for the Board of Education. And I'm sure Matt will be thrilled when I say this, but he knows, and Veronica, you were on the Board of Selectmen when there was a very substantial cut to the town budget. And where did it go? It went to capital. I think that there might be areas that, and I can't answer for Matt and the board, but if it's 25 in 4 different locations or 101, can it be done? It could be done, but it's kicking the can down the road, as you said. It's kicking the can down the road. And, that's next year listen, people, it's going to get right back in the budget next year because it's going to be needed. Trucks and capital and things that are discretionary don't just go away and disappear. And so I think that on the Board of Ed side, I think that there's room on the discretionary side, but it's kicking the can down the road. And this is my opinion. These are numbers that I'm throwing out there. Maybe some of you feel it could be more, and some of you feel that it shouldn't be cut at all, but I want to start it as a discussion.
I think that there's too many imponderables out there, as I said earlier, and the concern that we should have is what we're going to be needing as we get into the last part of this year. And I would hate to go in for fund balance now and then have to face it in a larger way in the fall. I think we have to watch what we have. We have to, I don't like this kicking the can down the road business because all of these expenditures are well-founded. We go way back in December and January on both boards to understand that these were not frivolously assembled. And I think we've got to hold on to the undesignated balance as long as we can and only rely on it if we're in a desperate situation. If we can do that, and with the uses of revenue and the cuts you proposed, which I support, if we can do that and hang on for this year, I think we'll be in a better position to at least provide some relief to the taxpayers now and protect ourselves against the unknown tomorrow.
Thank you, Ken. There's one particular point that I want to just confirm, goes to Mary Jane and Matt, just to make sure. When we talk about surplus and unassigned fund balance, I want to make it also clear that this board, way back in the times that Mr. Hoey was chairman of the Board of Finance, has a policy, and that policy was to maintain a certain percentage of unassigned fund balance in percentage to the total budget. We've been pretty comfortable at 10%. I mean, the numbers range and go from 5 to 15%, but we really kind of picked the 10% as a benchmark number, and we hit the number. Doesn't mean that we can't go more, doesn't mean that we can be less, but 10 is a very comfortable number that I think that previous boards and this board has welcomed and has instituted. And so to maintain that 10%, of course, when a budget goes up, it means that your percentage or your amount that you've got to put into it goes up. And what would that amount be in the surplus that would need to go into the unassigned fund balance from this fiscal year to maintain the 10%?
Mike, I think based on the increase in the budget last year, you're looking at about $300,000 to maintain it. However, Mary Jane can confirm this. Our percentage is a bit over 10% of our operating budget. We're probably, what, 10.2, 10.1, which means we've got, which would basically it's a little over $10 million. It's a 10 change. So in order to continue to stay at the level we're currently at, you need to add $300,000 out of the current fiscal year budget to the unassigned fund balance. So I think Mary Jane's talking about 257, 260 or whatever the number is, and the Board of Ed is talking about 4. So that leaves you with, that leaves you with what, about $150,000, $160,000 if you want to maintain it. Now, the logic is, and someone mentioned this earlier, these are extreme times. And that's what you have fund balances like this for, unassigned fund balances for, to get you through these curves. But I also want to agree with the point that was made earlier. I don't think the challenge is the 2021 budget. I think the challenge is going to be the 21-22 budget. It will fall out over the next year in terms of what the impact to our local revenues are, what the impact to our tax revenues are. And let's not forget the elephant in the room, which is the state of Connecticut. From one perspective, the good news is we don't get an awful lot of money from them, but what we do get is something that doesn't have to come out of the taxpayers' pockets. I think you've all heard my position on the use of fund balance, owing to the fact that when I inherited the position you're sitting in, Mr. Chairman, it was a common practice to budget every year allocation from unallocated fund balance or unassigned fund balance. And that was because we had tax collection estimates that were lower than our actual numbers. That was because we did not budget for supplemental motor vehicle tax increases that came in during the middle of the year. So there was a sort of a rolling game. We knew we were going to create a surplus, and that surplus was used every year to offset the budget. It's fine if that methodology continues to work for you. But when we started to change the way we did our budgeting, more accurately reflecting our tax collection and estimating those supplemental motor vehicle tax increases, we were no longer able to create those kind of year over year surpluses that we could use to balance the budget. And I only caution you because once you start down the path of using unassigned or fund balance, you need to find that same revenue source the following year just to get back to even. So there is an opportunity here that you're committing to a path where you're going to be using unassigned fund balances, or you're going to have to make the decision and finally pass it along to the taxpayers next year, the year after, et cetera. Now, you're saying that you may be committing. I'm saying you may be committing to doing this on a multiple year basis, when you are looking at an opportunity to have a substantially diminished capacity to add to your fund balance because of the same things that I've just talked about. Local revenues being off, tax collection rates being lower, and state aid being there. So I just caution you, if you start down that path, you may be on that path for a little while, and it may be hard to continue to replicate the ability to use those funds without dramatically impacting your unassigned fund balance percentages.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on, well, and I wanted to go there because I know that it's something that we've talked about. In the end, when we set a mill rate and a revenue budget, that will be something that need to be considered. Tonight, again, we can focus on budget reductions and where, what we think is palatable based on what we know after months and months of this. So, Matt, thank you for your comments, and anybody else?
So my quick comment on the unassigned fund balance, I think the public probably know it a little better, is our rainy day fund. Years ago, made a call to the rating agencies. They just told me that 8% was pretty conducive with a AAA rating. And, you know, I do like Guilford being AAA rated. It gives us the borrowing power that we need when we need it. So I'm pretty comfortable with the reserve account and the, you know, the policies that have evolved to keep that funded. And I'm pretty comfortable with it between 8 and 10%. But I sort of have a little bit of a unique viewpoint on it, and that is that after about 10%, now I'm starting to think you need to actually return that money to taxpayers. And then I'll make a comment about our current situation. I definitely think it's raining. So just some thoughts on the unassigned fund balance.
Okay.
Mike, just to back up, just so I'm sure that I'm clear that I understand. Were you talking about, all right, so you mentioned cuts of 200 and 100, and then would you put in on top the surplus, and you'd be coming in, anticipated surpluses, you'd be coming in to get us down to the 1% mill rate increase?
So let's take a scenario.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take 200 reduction on the Board of Ed side, 100 on the town side.
Yep.
And what we just heard on surpluses, of course, I wrote them down in the area.
You'd only need a couple of hundred more.
Right. Well, we heard 275.
Yeah.
Right? And we heard 250. So that's about, let's just conservatively say $500,000.
Yep.
Right. About 300 of that will maintain exactly what we have now. As we heard from Matt and Mary Jane, it's probably less than that because we're at 10.2 if we're looking at it, you know, again, these are rounded numbers.
Yep.
But we should have 300 of that amount that should go into the unassigned fund balance to maintain what we have now. On top of that 300, anything above that will bring us at a larger percentage. It might be 10.3, 10.4, whatever, you know, it's fairly minimal. But the numbers would, those are the numbers that, you know, we could have. Should that be the case, that extra amount as a surplus that's above and beyond what would keep it at the 10%,
right,
could possibly be used to then go towards mitigating a tax impact.
I understand.
That's the only reason that we're looking at it.
Yeah.
I mean, an option of taking $500,000 out, $500,000 is going to be a heck of a lot different than $100,000 trying to find it next year. And so those are the differences. And the danger, our first selectman just said, is that you have to find that money next year, which can be very difficult to do when you have a lot of other things going against you. And we don't know. There might be line items in either one of the budgets in 2021 that end up being hugely impacted based on, and we've heard from the superintendent, special services, legal services, tuition. There's a number of items that could truly be a one-time hit that we're going to have to take to be able to cover the budget because of the needs that the students are going to have. And that's just one scenario. Matt, go ahead. I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, Mike. I think Bob's question was, how do you get to under a 1% tax increase with the use of fund balance? It's about $150,000, Bob. They get you a total number of 450 based on what Mike has put on the table. So that gets you to that 0.97. So you could play around with the numbers, but 450 is a round number, gets you to 0.97 percent tax increase.
I just want to be sure we're on the same page. Got it.
Yeah, I mean, the way you would look at it for 1% is a swing. It could be, you know, again, it's the options that were presented at the beginning of this. It could be all out of unassigned fund balance. It could be all out of budget reductions, or a mix of both.
Yeah.
However you want to slice it technically.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be honest. You know, 150 is a pretty reasonable number. Going back to that next year, either identifying or passing it along in terms of tax increase is going to be de minimis in terms of passing the 150 if you elect not to take it out of fund balance again next year.
I think the idea of just taking, you know, something that I've thought about is, well, if we keep what we have in there, keep that percentage, and whatever's extra goes towards giving back. Technically, that's what it would be doing.
So are we talking about both now, the cuts and
we're
the surplus?
we're talking about both, but we only really have to do one. But maybe just having an idea of what both is will make it easier to decide what we should do with the budget, whether we decide tonight on what we approve for a budget, or again, we have until May 5th, which would mean another special meeting, by the way. Just, you know, we would need to schedule another special meeting if we were going to continue this. Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, I have sent a question off to council about what time frame you would have to set the mill rate. Traditionally, it's 10 days after a successful referendum. However, these are different circumstances. We have a 30-day extension on our decision window, and I'm assuming the 30-day extension would go would apply to adding the 10 days onto that, which would put it 10 days after May 21st. However, I am not an attorney, which is why I sent the question along to council to determine exactly when you have to set the mill rate. I would suspect that it's no more than 10 days after you make the decision, and more likely 10 days after the 30-day extension was granted.
That's a good point. Yeah, because we do have a limitation usually we have to follow on that 10-day.
Right, and I might remind you, it was a couple of years ago, I believe, you guys lowered the mill rate. Was it last year? No,
it was last year.
Last year, you lowered the mill rate as a result of a revision in your estimates of the interest income.
Right.
So you did that after the budget was approved.
Right.
For what it's worth, Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate the conversation about maybe settling the budget portion this evening. I know that it is a minor complication and all that you are juggling as a board, but the planning that we have in front of us as the school system is already more disrupted than it's ever been in the past, and waiting on the budget to be finalized and adding to that, having a final budget number one way or the other sooner rather than later would allow us to at least have some firm pieces in our planning moving forward, a significantly important piece. I do appreciate the idea, or at least the suggestion, that the budgets might be finalized tonight, even if your total package can't be completed.
So that would technically mean, based on what our first selectman said, that if the 10-day goes into effect and we make a decision tonight on the budgets, the mill rate would need to be set. Don't quote me on this. Is it May 6th?
May 5th.
May 5th. It would have to be by May 5th. That would be. Is it 10? It's 10 calendar days, right? Not 10 working days.
10 calendar days.
Okay.
We realize that we're just one piece, but again, I wouldn't have felt like I was advocating for the system if I didn't at least get that on the table tonight.
Okay. Thank you for that.
There's so many things that we don't know. If we could solve what the budget is going to be, would be one more piece that we do know.
And our community as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So your proposal, Mike, your proposal is 200 to the Board of Ed and 100 to the town side?
Yeah, right now that's what I'm putting out there for all of you to discuss. I just want to make sure 10 days, Matt, sorry, I just want to make sure 10 days from tonight for the mill rate would be, it appears to be May 7th, Thursday, May 7th.
Right.
Okay.
That would be
I thought I heard May 5th before, that's why. So if it's Thursday, May 7th, then fine. I just want to make sure we have that date now. Thank you. Megan, go ahead.
For what it's worth, 200 is the max that I would be supportive of on the Board of Ed side. I don't want to support anything higher than 200,000.
I'll make a motion that we cut the Board of Education 200,000, the town of Guilford 100,000, and that any surplus from the 1920 budget goes towards the 2021 budget to offset.
Motion's on the table. Do I hear a second? Megan, you're seconding?
Second. Yeah.
Okay. Discussion. My only point to this, just to make sure, we don't have to have the, I mean, you can make it as part of the motion, but we're really just talking about, at this particular moment, the expenditure budget of the 200, 100. But I don't think we need to make a decision on moving forward with, staying tonight on this line item, or this motion to do the surplus.
That's fine. I can amend my motion. I just wanted to make it clear that I really do not want to touch unfunded balance unless we absolutely have to. I'd rather use the surplus.
I want to make it clear that I don't disagree with you. I just think that if we focus on the budget and let things ride another week or two, maybe we have better projections, and maybe we can have a better understanding of our revenue budget, and then we can set a mill rate based on that. So I think we just keep it to the expenditure budget.
Okay, I amend my motion.
Second,
Megan,
as amended.
Okay.
Would a 1 week delay on the surplus get us any closer to a definitive number on the budget?
Like everything else we've said tonight, we don't know. Maybe not. But I think the motion that's on the table right now is more about where we feel the budget should be for planning purposes for both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed, as we heard from Dr. Freeman. Where the mill rate gets set is going to be based on probably as much information as we can obtain prior to the setting of the mill rate.
So whatever that is, we'll have to have a number on that by May.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Does that give the town and the schools enough time to give us that guidance?
Well, let me just remind you that they're estimates. I know Mary Jane and Linda, you're laughing or smiling or smirking, and I understand why. They are projections. Right. Those projections could change overnight after we set the mill rate. We have to have as much of an indication or as much information as we can to kind of fill in that crystal ball. Go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, you will need to specify a hard dollar amount when you set the mill rate.
That's right.
You cannot. I know Veronica was trying to say something, but you can't put a speculative number out there. And by the way, we won't know what the true surplus is until sometime after our audit is completed.
Right.
So we would need to have to put a firm number in there in order to set the mill rate. And I just did have a question. The thinking, in the way Veronica expressed it in her motion, suggested all of the surplus from this fiscal year. There was some discussion earlier about the excess amount above and beyond what it would take to keep us at our 10.2%.
If anything, that's something, as you know, with the amended motion, we're
right.
We're covered.
I think Katie wanted to say something, Mike.
Kate, I saw you. Yeah, where are you?
I was just saying I'm right here. That does you no good.
You're over there on my screen. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I Matt just said it. I mean, I think this is, you know, Linda's putting together numbers to the best of her ability. There is a long time between now and June 30th, and there's still a lot unknown. So I was simply going to echo, you know, that these are truly estimates, but there's a lot that can happen over the next couple of months.
It's just a matter of the closer we get to June 30th, hopefully the numbers will be. But
I think we. Right. Well, and I think we can all make pretty solid, educated guesses about what's going to happen for the remainder of this school year. But the reality is we do not know yet. We have not been given a date yet. So again, it seems that we can make guesses, but we don't even know that. So I think this is truly an estimate.
Okay. Thank you. We have the motion on the floor. Any further discussion?
I was kind of eyeing up this webinar from CCM, where also some of us are signed up for tomorrow, about forecasting budgets in an uncertain economy. I was hoping we wouldn't have to get pushed into a decision tonight until we saw a little bit more. It is so hard. I mean, nobody here wants to be in this position, right?
Yeah.
And I understand that the superintendent would like a number to go home with as well. But I think he's got at this point, at least he's got a pretty clear indication. And would that be enough?
I would like to add, Bob, if I could, I'm signed up for that as well. You are, I'm sure others are.
I am too.
It crossed my mind, do we wait? The reason I don't think we need to wait is because a lot of those municipalities that are starting the process or in the midst of their discussions, keep in mind, we're one of the earliest ones out of the chute.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at municipalities that are going through the process now, they've been going through it for a couple months. We've been doing this for a very long time. We thought we would have had it wrapped up by April 21st. And then this got pretty much thrown upon us. So I'm looking very forward to the CCM webinar tomorrow. And I'm, expecting that a lot of things that are said, we're going to have already addressed. I feel very confident in that. So I look forward to hearing what they have to say. So. Any other discussion?
It seems to me that, this proposal is kind of addressing the concerns that we have in a number of different areas. We're recognizing the impact that the situation has had on families and their income. But at the same time, it's recognizing that we have services that unfortunately the town has these responsibilities. If a house catches fire, the fire department has to go and put it out. If there's a crime committed, the police department has to go and investigate and arrest and do all those things associated with it. The state mandates that we provide the best education that we can for free to our students, regardless of their ability or their needs. And given what's happened to those students over the last 6 weeks, we know that there's going to be a huge burden placed on the school system to try and address those deficits that the students have suffered. And the faculty and administration are doing the best they can under a rapidly changing landscape to keep that deficit from growing bigger. But even their best efforts won't be enough to prevent that deficit from being substantial when those kids go back to school. And we don't even know when that date is yet. So the fact that we're asking them to take on all of the town agencies to take on these additional duties on top of what they've historically done, and then balancing that with the desire to minimize the impact on the residents whose businesses have been impacted by this situation is a very difficult balancing act, in my opinion. And I think the idea that we reduce the Board of Education by $200,000 and the town by $100,000, and then make up that $450,000 number with what we can fairly confidently project as a surplus on the town and the school side, without impacting the fund balance, strikes a balance where we're minimizing the increase in the taxes to 1%, which is an increase, there's no doubt about it, but it's not what we thought was going to be the increase a month and a half ago, which at the time we felt was a very reasonable budget. And at the same time, it allows us to keep the undesignated fund balance at the level that we've historically kept it at over the past few years, leaving it as a resource should we need to tap into it when we find out more information with regard to costs and expenditures that we're going to have to address the situation that we're focusing on right now. It seems to me that passing this resolution with regard to the expenditures at least, gets us a long way towards accomplishing those goals of not crippling the town and the Board of Education in ways that will really impair their ability to deliver the services, but at the same time minimizes the impact to a certain extent to the citizens of the town with regard to their taxes, and leaves us the funds available to address bigger expenditures than we may have anticipated when we're adopting this budget at the present time. The other thing, and I don't know if this was mentioned earlier, is we have to keep in mind that next year's budget is also the first year in a while where the debt service is going to diminish. And that will allow us at least some latitude with regard to potential tax implications for the citizens, because our debt service is going to decline slightly next year. So that there's that added flexibility, which we may be able to take advantage of next year when we're adopting the 21-22 budget. So I think it's a reasonable solution to a really unreasonable situation that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments. And one of the things I wanted to mention is when you were talking about we were going into this year, the budget referendum was basically going to be proposing a 1.44% mill rate or tax increase. And I think we said it a couple of different times that at that time, that, you know, if we kept everything the way it is, at this particular moment, didn't change a thing, it would be the lowest tax increase in 20 years. So, you know, listen, the budgets came in very responsibly, but, you know, it helps also to have a decent revenue year on a couple of occasions that we saw on some of the line items on the local side, and then a healthy grand list, which we haven't had. We've had, but not to the level that we had this past year, which was good, which all really kind of was a benefit. And a lot of people didn't know about it, largely because unfortunately there was an article that talked about 5%, 3 and 5% increases, and not anything about what the mill rate or tax increase was. And I think that was unfortunately a fictitious perception that was out there. So I, you know, appreciate you saying that we went in knowing that we were in a pretty good place, and now we got to go even better. And then we feel that way because of the current situation. So.
You mentioned the grand list, Mike, and that's one of the things that concerns me about the future budget, the 21-22 budget. We don't know what the impact on our grand list is going to be.
We usually don't. We just have our economic development director who helps us along the way, and then hope the grand list reflects what's going on in the town property. So, anybody further on discussion?
Well, we will have to set a meeting date for a follow-up meeting. What date do you propose setting?
Well, at this particular moment, I mean, well, before we discuss that, we do have a motion.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Regarding basically a $200,000 reduction in the Board of Education budget. I should mention that this is beyond what was already reduced on March 5th. A $100,000 reduction on the Board of Selectmen budget. Again, $50,000 was reduced on March 5th, so in addition to that. So it'll be a 250, 150 cut to both budgets, total of 400 in totality from what we did on from the totality of what was originally presented to us on March 3rd.
But the mill rate is set on the...
The mill rate will be set separately. This is just for the budget. Again, maybe there was a little bit confusing. We're talking about an additional 200, an additional 100 to both budgets.
Right, because the mill rate increase of 1.44% was based on the post reduction.
Right. Yeah. Now, if those budgets are approved and we don't do anything on the revenue side and do not do any surplus pulling or unassigned fund balance, that would bring, I believe, I just threw it into the spreadsheet, it would be 1.13 on a mill rate increase. So that would be the tax increase, 1.13 with these reductions, with no further actions done when we set the mill rate. We have the option to go lower on unassigned or surplus taking some of the surplus. Any further comment, discussion?
No, thanks.
If none, I'm going to go through each member of the Board of Finance, as we need to do now, and ask for your vote. I would be in favor of the motion, and nay would be opposed. Megan Scanlon.
Aye.
Veronica Wallace.
Aye.
Ken Gammerman.
Aye.
Mike Ailes. Aye. Jeff Beattie.
Aye.
Jonathan Trotta.
Abstain.
Bob Hartman.
Aye.
Okay. Budgets are set. We have met the requirement of the Board of Selectmen and the governor, although I want to make it very clear that we have not set the mill rate. We do not intend on doing that tonight. That will be further discussion. Now to go to the discussion, Ken Gammerman, of what we do before we go into public forum, because I do know that there's still quite a few people on for public forum, 9:30, which I very much appreciate. We will set the mill rate. Matt, I'll work with you on this in terms of the date. I think we probably should, I don't know, in a discussion with all of us here, it sounds like we want to try to wait as long as we can. That might be something we need to wait until we get feedback, right? On the 10-day rules.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. So
we should have an answer on that no later than Wednesday.
Okay. So we won't set a date on that, but I'm sure it will be publicized. I'm sure it will. We'll get that out. Again, on the website, we will have information. Tracy, I know that you'll probably do an update on the website so that it's up there. And then regarding setting the mill rate meeting, which ultimately at this point is something we usually do without much input. We just set the mill rate. But I think that this year it's important enough to make sure people know what go into that decision besides just the budget. Usually we do approve a revenue budget. But last year, as Matt said, we did not, and it actually worked out better. We were able to put some more revenue in as for the interest income. So is there anything further from the board? Before we open up to public forum, go ahead, Veronica.
I have a concern, and I'm not quite sure who to address it to or what we do or if we know. But we have a problem at Guilford Lakes with heating and air conditioning, and it was a bonding issue. And it's been costing us a lot of money for emergency repairs. I just see that this is going to be another pressure on us next year if we have to continue to repair a failing system. So I'm wondering if there's discussion or what we can do in particular about that bonding item.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, I think the answer to that was in the soliloquy I gave early part of the meeting when Jonathan and I were talking about the various executive orders. 7S7 specifically addressed adding to the capabilities of the Board of Finance to conduct certain, to approve certain expenditures. That included anything bonded, all right? So that's where we have the choice of asking our health director if it's okay to hold a referendum, or the Board of Finance can actually make that decision and move it forward. And I will give you a written statement to that effect tomorrow.
So, well, I was aware of that.
Mr. First Selectman, is there some language in there about a 1% cap or something?
Yeah, subject to the 1% cap.
Yeah, and this falls out of that, correct? It was 2.6 million, I think.
Right, it's above the 1% cap, so that's why I want to get a legal reading on this. So you'll get a written statement after I have the attorneys take a look at it.
Yeah.
typically something like this, if it's bonded, you know, you think, well, you know, we can wait it out until there's another vote or something. We have been dealing with lakes for a while, Veronica. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, I'm concerned about it.
Expenses, and it's costing us a heck of a lot more over a few years now than just getting it done and getting it put to bed for 20 years or 25 years. So yeah, when we get that ruling, we can certainly then discuss what direction we go in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to go to mute all.
Mike, I have one small item to bring up. It's a little bit unrelated, but usually our director of finance is way ahead of us on these things, but someone had mentioned to me that there's $100 million in assistance for firefighters for a grant, and it's related to the COVID-19 program. I think it's from FEMA. And I'm wondering if we're already planning on applying for it. He called it AFG-S application.
Mary Jane, go ahead.
I actually have a meeting at the fire department Thursday morning there to go over 3 potential areas of funding for the fire department. And so we are on it.
Okay. Yeah, sounds like there might be some grant money available.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I actually have the Executive Order 7S in front of me. And there is an exception to the 1%.
Yeah,
rule.
health and wellness, I think.
Exactly, because if that body makes the specific findings that such actions are necessary to permit the orderly operation of the municipality, and there's a need to act immediately and during the duration of the public health and civil preparedness emergency in order to avoid endangering public health and welfare, prevent significant financial loss, or action that is otherwise necessary for the protections of person and property within the municipality. So I will get that opinion or statement from legal, but I think that gives you the capacity to make that decision.
Especially if it's health and safety, because it is a health and safety issue.
Yeah, that was my thought, is that it very well could be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once we get everything ruled, we'll set a date and we might have 2 items on the agenda based on that.
Cool.
All right. All right. Any further discussion before I click the button? I got mute all and I'm about to mute everybody. So last chance. Okay. All right. Everyone's muted. I'd like to go to item number 3, public forum. Anybody wishing to address the board in public forum? I'm going to also, Tracy, you take a look. I'm also going to click a button here that puts everybody on my screen. If, of course, I could figure it out. Oh, here it is. Okay, any hands? Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? Well, well, well. I guess we made all the right decisions here. Okay, gotcha. I see. Gotcha.
Hi, I'm Yvonne. Can you hear me?
Yes. Name and address, and you can go ahead with your comments.
Yvonne Logan, 155 Trolley Road, Guilford.
Thank you.
Guilford has about 850 employees. Is that right? Approximately?
The town side or
altogether?
Altogether. I don't know the exact, I don't have the audit in front of me, but I would say okay. That's about the right number.
Yeah, I've been on commissions, so and that's the number I'm familiar with.
Okay.
Do you know if they're all of them or some of them or most of them are slated for salary increases this year?
Well, we have addressed that earlier in the meeting regarding the contracts. I would imagine that all the contracts include increases. Those increases, I did write them down, see if I get them right, and I will answer the question. Usually we do reserve public forum commentary, but unique circumstances, unique times. The Board of
Mr.
Education.
Chairman, I think Mitch is with us tonight too.
Yeah, Mitch could always back me up on this. Mitch, I'll unmute you just in case. It takes a second for it to do it. Police, fire, public works, GEA, and GSA are those town contracts that are going to be negotiated or in the process of negotiation. On the Board of Ed side, the only Board of Ed contracts are, I believe, paraprofessional clerical, and food service. Food service, though, is revenue-based, correct, Linda? And there was one other one, I believe, that was up. No, that was it. Okay, so it was just paraclerical, and then food service is basically a revenue generator, so it's a wash on the contracts. So.
That's
okay,
correct.
my question was that due to these unusual circumstances, how would be the chances of requesting the employees or informing employees that there will be no salary increases this year, that would remain steady? I mean, many of us have had that from our corporate lives and our other work associations, that there's no increases sometimes. That would save us some money right there.
Are there any other questions before I go
on? No, I guess the other thing I was thinking that I believe the school system has a declining population. The enrollment is not increasing, but it's declining. And it seems like there should be a reduction in costs in that case and not increases.
Okay. Those are questions we can certainly address. I just want to make sure that you've asked everything so we can address it all at once.
Okay.
Okay.
Just something to think about.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you were part of the entire meeting. I know we had discussed the contracts and if those were, if there was any consideration of 0% increases in those salaries. I know we had Dr. Freeman, we had First Selectman Hoey both addressed the fact those contracts, most of them had been negotiated and some have not. I think one of the key items on that particular issue is the asking, if this board decided to cut hundreds of thousands of dollars out, it might in fact force the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed to look at contracts and request reductions. We know that's a dangerous thing to do, and I also think, and we've heard it from Dr. Freeman and Mr. Hoey, that cutting or asking flat salaries of employees that are incredibly essential, working incredibly hard, and ask them to go zero for a year. Yes, there's some cost savings of that, but we did it with the teachers many years ago to a detriment. I won't necessarily go through the story of that. I did unfreeze or unmute Dr. Freeman and Matt if you want to state it again. But on the Board of Education side, we never got back really to where we were with the teachers when they had conceded. And we were the only ones to do so in 2009. We were looked upon pretty negatively when we did that. Asked them to open it up, and I don't think there's any really any want to go back there. So on that particular area, Dr. Freeman, I don't know if you want to say anything about the, asking anybody for 0% after the contracts have already been signed. You'd have to reopen them.
Yeah, so I mean, the suggestion of informing the employees that we would be freezing raises is a non-starter. We do have negotiated contracts. The most we could do would be to approach the associations and make a request. To your point, Mr. Ailes, right, 11 years ago, the Guilford teachers gave back a previously negotiated raise. They were the only teachers association in all of the state of Connecticut to do that. We have had 3 successor contracts since that time, and none of those have been generous contracts. The teachers never saw a double increase in any of those contracts to make up the ground that was lost at that time. The other comment that I would make is that yes, Guilford is experiencing declining enrollment. not nearly to the degree that other like communities are experiencing. The budget as it sits in front of you already includes the reduction of 6 teaching positions in response to that declining enrollment. And in fact, over the last 10 years, we have used the declining enrollment to offset other expenses. So while we have fewer students in the school district, we have more complicated students, we have more students with special needs, we have students with more complicated special needs. And this board and the Board of Education know full well that we've used that declining enrollment to offset the growth in capacity in the district. We now have roughly half the number of students who are outplaced to more expensive private schools because we can meet the needs of those students in district. So while we haven't seen a declining budget, I would say that we have reduced the increases to this budget and we've used the declining enrollment to offset those increases. It is hard, however, to document and to show costs that have been avoided. But I would argue to anyone that we've kept those cost increases down by capitalizing on that declining enrollment. And again, this budget already has 6 fewer teachers next year than we have working in the schools today.
First Selectman Howie, anything to add?
No, other than the fact that we are actively negotiating contracts with 5 unions. I will add that earlier today I received the survey, results of a survey from CCM on some of these very same questions about whether we were including employee raises in the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. And of the 66 municipalities who responded, only 1 definitively said no. Excuse me, 2 of them said no. And they happen to be large cities where the coronavirus is significantly impacting what's going on. So at this point, we will enter into full negotiate. We are in full negotiations. We will have conversations with them about the impact. And I think it's safe to say that no matter what comes of our negotiations with them, the coronavirus will have an impact on anything we do.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And thank you for your question. I appreciate participation during public forum, so thank you. Anybody else wishing to address the board? Okay. I don't see anybody on video who's waving, and I don't see any raised hands. So with that, thank you, everybody.
Mr. Chairman, there's a question. Mr. Chairman, there's a comment from a
I just saw it. Yeah, I just saw it come up. I just saw it. Sarah Salato.
Yes, hi. I'm Sarah Salato. I live at 51 Kendall Court, and I wanted to thank you for the opportunity for us to be able to be involved in this. I do want to say, though, that I am disappointed in the budget decrease that's been asked. Obviously, we were hoping that it wasn't going to be a tremendous amount, and I just wanted to, I don't know if Dr. Freeman can speak to this, just to maybe help ease the concerns and nervousness of those parents that may be on here as to what $200,000 may look like. Again, I don't know if this is even anything he can address right now, or just to kind of calm our nerves as to what they may look like.
Go ahead, Dr. Freeman. Thank you.
So obviously the Board of Ed would have the final determination on where any of those reductions were made, but I think to some comments that were made early, a reduction of $200,000, we would work very hard to try to isolate that reduction, if at all possible, to line items like maintenance and capital improvement, and to limit the impact that it could have on students, to all the commentary that you heard tonight. You know, when we began these conversations 3 meetings ago, I know that there was some talk about a possible reduction of $900,000 to the school side. I want to say that I very much appreciate the effort that this board has made towards balancing that. $200,000 we would work to isolate into those other lines and minimize any reduction to the services that the students would be receiving. But I wouldn't be able to be more specific than that before we look at it internally in the business office and make recommendations to the Board of Education, who will have the final decision on what lines are reduced to make up that $200,000 reduction. I think I can speak for the board and say that we're much happier with a $200,000 reduction than a $900,000 reduction. It's much more likely that we will be able to minimize the impact. I do, if I can, Mr. Chair, want to take the opportunity to say that there's been a lot of commentary about the unknowns of next year. We have talked in the past about how hard we work not to have to come back before this board to make requests of additional funding during the school year. But if that were ever to next year, again, if the impacts of the type that we are discussing here tonight come to be, there is a likelihood that we may find that this budget, whether it was reduced or not tonight, ends up being less than we need for next year. We will make every effort not to come back before this board, but should we need a supplemental appropriation, we will obviously work with you and keep you apprised through the course of the year, responding to whatever changes and whatever unknowns we face next year.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how.
Thank
sorry.
you, sir.
Just to put this into context, 200,000 out of a $62 million budget is a small. It's less than 0.3%. It's not life changing, I don't think, in any way.
Dr. Balistraci, go ahead. I see you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment. I will say, though, that this is a budget, and this has been noted by Board of Finance members already, but this is a budget that was crafted very, very carefully. We came to with a budget that we thought was particularly inflexible. And I really, really appreciate the Board of Finance's extraordinarily careful deliberation about all of this, about the balancing of our community members that have been so hard hit, about our students who we think are going through a particularly challenging time right now and are going to come back to us likely in September, likely not before, come back to us in the schools needing extra supports. As Dr. Freeman just alluded to, let me just throw out, one possibility, if we were looking at, a split school day, that means extra bus runs. So the implications here in terms of additional resources are large in a whole variety of scenarios, none of which we can really imagine right now. I echo Dr. Freeman's thanks. $200,000 is definitely better than $900,000, but $200,000 will be felt. And we will, as a Board of Education, look carefully at ways in which we can find that $200,000 in a way that minimizes disruption to what we need to do come September.
Thank you. Anyone else in public forum? I'll keep it open for one more. Okay. Closing public forum. All right, thank you, everyone. As soon as we hear back from our first selectman regarding the dates and the rulings from the town attorney, I guess, we will continue on the path of setting a mill rate. And we will also possibly have the bonding resolution on there as well, based on what we find out. So thank you all for attending. Thank you all for a really good discussion. And at this point, I think I've heard a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Veronica with a motion to adjourn. I hear Bob Hartman with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe.
Good night. Nice job.
Wash your hands.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.